information shared on Girl Pray On It is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Although I am a licensed mental health counselor, I'm not your therapist. Unless, of course, you're one of my clients. In that case, I am your therapist, and I'll see you in our next session. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapeutic relationship between us. If you are experiencing emotional distress or a mental health crisis, please seek support from a licensed mental health provider in your area or contact a crisis line. Always pray on it, and also reach out when you need help.
But not to us. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you, pretty in blue?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Great, alhamdulillah.
Okay, that's great. It's another episode of Girl Pray On It.
Mm-hmm.
And we're back.
We are.
We are. So you're a revert,
I
right?
am.
What surprised you the most about Muslims or becoming Muslim?
Okay, one thing, if you're a revert and you walk into a masjid, you go to the bathroom, like there's watering cans
Yeah.
in the bathroom, which I know now are called lotas, and there's bidets or faucet sprays.
Yeah.
And if you have absolutely no context or understanding as to why that is, you just be walking into the bathroom and there are watering cans all over the floor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is that? And honestly, I figured that out. And I myself have a watering can in my bathroom.
Well,
that was very shocking.
Yeah, that's really funny. Don't drink the water
God, please,
in
no.
the Muslim bathrooms.
No.
I actually think we really need to level up as a community. If you don't have like bidet installed or you don't have one of those sprayers, I like to call them butt sprayers, you need to level up. Like the watering can is so cumbersome. I just don't like it.
I've adapted. Yeah, it was really confusing when I first saw one.
But have you sat on a bidet? A bidet is really that's a real good experience.
It's a really good experience that I experienced when I went to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot more of them in Europe, but surely they must have gotten this from the Arabs.
Probably. Yeah. Probably because they were when you think of bubonic plague, the Black Plague, it was all started in Europe, okay? They were not washing their hands and they were not washing their butts. We really are the cleanest community when you really think about it.
For sure. This is a religion of hygiene.
Right, it is, right? How many times we make wudu? You're making wudu a minimum of 2 times a day. Minimum, right? I mean, if you can hold it, right? And then with the addition of making istinja and using water to clean yourself after you use the bathroom, right? We're just super clean.
Sure, and I love that about us.
I do, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I love that for us.
Okay, great.
Okay. What do you find is just a shocking thing about the Muslim community? Let's say you're interacting with a non-Muslim and they are seeing something shocking. What do you think it would be? What's the most shocking thing?
The most shocking thing? Oh, I mean, because we get this every Ramadan. No water.
Oh, yeah.
No gum.
So true.
Yeah, that's the thing that I always have to, repeat. Not even water. Bro, it's so irritating. I'm so tired of, having to explain. Yeah, no, not even water.
No water, no food.
Yeah. And, Google is free. I don't want to have to keep explaining this stuff to you. These are all things you can look up. You don't have to ask me. I used to be really nice about it and would explain all this stuff about Ramadan. I used to, in high school, I would do these presentations every year about what Ramadan is, even in middle school, and what we do and da-da-da-da. And then you still get 1,000 questions. And I was like, okay, well, this is back when everybody didn't have a personal laptop, smartphone, tablet. Right. Now it's just, I don't want to answer your question. Just look it up. Google is free. Yeah. But yeah, that was probably the thing that most non-Muslims are what? That's crazy. And I'm it's not that crazy. And now everybody's doing intermittent fasting. So here we are, right? We're really the trendsetters. Totally. Today we're talking about something that is near and dear to my heart because I come from 2 parents who are reverts, and my best friend, Miss Rebecca over here, is a revert. And so our topic for today is reverts and their place within the Muslim community. I mean, just to kind of give my initial thoughts, the best of Muslims were reverts in our deen, right? The Sahaba were all reverts, right?
Yes, exactly.
I feel as a community have kind of forgotten their place. I think communities around the US are trying to be more inclusive of reverts, but we still have a long way to go. Yeah. And I'm interested in, well, one, since you are a revert, I want to hear from you about your revert story if you're comfortable telling us.
Sure.
Okay.
The long version or the short version?
Well,
Just kidding.
give us the medium version.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think if you've been watching our episodes, you've probably gained some insight into me as a person, as someone who's curious, an explorer, open-minded. At least that's how I hope I'm coming across.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's always been true for me. Always had a very curious mind and a very, like a soul searcher. That's why I became a therapist, because I was just interested in learning about who I was and fascinated with never-ending self-exploration, just learning about myself and the world around me from a very curious perspective. So I grew up really not very religious, but in a very tight-knit Jewish community that was quite liberal. And we were pretty secular in my family, but we identified as American Jewish.
Your ethnicity. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think I was ever like truly invested in Judaism as like it really being a religion that I was ever going to strictly follow. But I was, as many folks say, quite spiritual. So I believed in God. I still felt a inclination towards going to synagogue, really appreciated community, and always believed that there was God and that there was right and wrong, but just didn't really know what that meant.
Yeah.
My curiosity sort of led me toward exploring lots of different religions and lots of different backgrounds, but never really felt like anything was totally it for me until I met someone who was Muslim, and it really sparked my curiosity. I was like, oh,
Okay.
Islam, interesting. I didn't really know too much about that. And just so you know, I grew up in a really small town where there was like no Muslims, at least none that I knew. So meeting someone who was Muslim was like quite intriguing to me and sparked me to research and look into Islam. And that's when I really discovered such a pure, amazing, perfect definition of God that was in complete alignment with my beliefs. That there is one God, one eternal God. There's no before him, there's no after him. He is eternal. He does not have children. That there is this ever-sustaining, ever-living being that exists. And that description that we are given in Islam just felt so right to me. So that was the first thing that kind of hooked me, was the definition of God. As I continued to look more and more into it, I just really fell in love with the devotion of prayer and how really meditative it is, and 5 times a day turning to Allah to be grateful, to worship God. It's really in alignment actually with peace and with like mental clarity, that you step away from your busy life and the stress 5 times a day to just reflect, to express gratitude, and to just be in full present moment with God, to thank God. That was what got me. And I also was really attracted to the modesty element of Islam. The thing that really attracted me to modesty was a step away from the appearance and a more focus on the inward soul. And I think I felt, prior to putting on hijab, I felt quite objectified in a way, in terms of there was always this focus on my appearance, and I was always striving toward looking the most attractive and being the most desirable in some sort of way. There was such a impulse that I had and an attraction toward the modesty, because it really took that away, that there was no longer this hyper focus on the way that I looked, and there was a lot more focus on who I was as a person and who I am inside and what I have to say and what I have to think and what I have to feel. for me, Islam has always been about finding the inner peace, finding who I am outside of what I look like.
Yeah.
I think those are the things that really appealed to me. And so I did read the Quran in English and start to get like a sense. And the more and more that I researched, the more peace I felt, the more love I felt, the more I realized that it was strengthening my relationships, making me a better daughter, a better friend, because I just felt more content with myself, but I also was being guided by principles of kindness and goodness toward the people in my life. Having a religion that was grounding me toward becoming a better person was inspiring me to just be kinder and better toward the people in my life. I just realized I liked myself a lot more when I was feeling this inner peace and when I was guided by principles of goodness and kindness.
That's great. That's great to hear. So earlier you mentioned your draw towards modesty within Islam. And I know this because we've been friends for a decade plus. But can you tell us what your life was like before and why you were fixated on your appearance?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that I grew up with a lot of praise as to the way that I looked. And this is no shade to my family members whatsoever,
Mm-hmm.
because I think there was still this really positive energy that I had in my family around like just kindness and goodness and praise toward one another. But there was a lot of praise regarding the way that I looked in a way that made me feel as though that was my worth was tied up to the way that I looked. And when you feel that your worth is connected to the way that you look, everything is now focused on trying to look the best that you possibly can. And there being a lot of pressure to look a certain way. There was a way in which I was always striving toward being like more and more beautiful as I could possibly try to be. And it was so damaging to feel as though I was only worthy depending on how good I looked.
Mm.
Another thing is that before I was Muslim, I was really, really committed and devoted toward musical theater. I'm
Mm-hmm.
still a huge theater nerd. I absolutely love musical theater, and it was my religion.
Mm.
It was my passion for many, many years. And I was like very devoted to the craft, took all the singing lessons, the acting lessons, the dancing lessons. But as you can imagine, that's also quite tied up with appearances. And there was a lot of pressure being in that industry to really look a certain way. And really, I felt a lot of pressure to look according to what was desirable in that field of being as thin as I possibly could be, trying to adopt this sort of ingenue role always felt to me like having to be really beautiful and thin and young and all of these things. And it was so much pressure and it was so damaging to my self image. There was just so much pressure to look a certain way. And when I started to meditate on Islam and my soul started to feel attracted toward Islam, I think that there was a way in which I felt relieved from all of that pressure because Islam is so focused on the internal rather than the external. And as soon as I started wearing hijab and I started to cover a little bit more, there was just this feeling of letting go of all of that pressure and expectation to look a certain way and be more focused on what was going on inside and what I had to say and who I was as a person.
Wow. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think as women, we've talked about this in previous episodes, we're always going to feel so much pressure to fit the Western standard of beauty, because that is what has been ingrained in us in society through racism, through capitalism, through colonization, all of these concepts that we have talked about before. I think it's really a struggle for a lot of women, even within the Muslim community. We're always striving to look a certain way or fit that really narrow-minded structure of beauty, Western standard of beauty. But I try to always remind myself that it doesn't matter what you look like in the eyes of Allah. Beauty in the eyes of Allah is what's in here.
Mhm.
You know what? Actually, that's my right side. It's my left side. It's what is beautiful is here. What is beautiful is here.
Yeah.
And it's really, when you live in a society that's so hyper-focused on appearance and is such a sexualized society, it's really hard to remember that. But Islam is the thing that makes me remember that.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you converted and you came into the fold of Islam, how did the community treat you? How did you find your place within the Muslim community? What are some of your reflections about the Muslim community? I know that's like a lot, but just things that you remember that were highlights or even lowlights of your time joining Islam.
Yeah, I will say I felt everyone was incredibly welcoming. There's no doubt about that. The Muslims that I interacted with at the masjid were incredibly welcoming with open arms. But I think my experience, which is I've heard from a lot of other reverts, is it only went up until a certain point where everyone's embracing you and everyone's really welcoming and it's really exciting. But the connection sort of ends there, where I have this really exciting, wonderful experience at the masjid, but then I go home and I feel really lonely. And the connection that I formed at the masjid is not translating outside of the masjid. So I think a lot of reverts end up feeling really welcomed at first into the community and then a bit abandoned because the connections that they formed are not being sustained. And I will say that one thing that really attracted me toward you and really made me feel like I wanted to be friends with you and just that we hit it off so well is that you, although are not a revert, understood what it felt like to come from that perspective as someone who was raised by reverts. And that you knew what it felt like for me to not have Muslim family. We really were each other's chosen family. And I have found a lot of connection with other reverts because that experience brings us together.
Yeah.
It's taken many years being within the Muslim community where I think I feel quite embraced by the Muslim community now, and I've found my place and found my corner. I have Muslim family now, but those initial few years were certainly hard, just in terms of the loneliness and how difficult it was to sustain connections with other Muslims long term.
Yeah. What was the hardest thing about becoming Muslim for you?
The judgment from the outside world. I think the hardest part was I had shared that I grew up in a small community and a really, really, really small town where everyone kind of knew everyone. I became Muslim in my last year of high school. And I put on the hijab right away, which made me very visible and visibly Muslim. So I think it was quite shocking for people who had known me since I was little to then all of a sudden see that I made this drastic change. And there was a lot of judgment toward me and toward my family. And it was really, really difficult for all of us. And I love and appreciate my family so much for supporting me through all of it. I think they were understandably hurt in the beginning, but trusted me. And I think the hardest part was that my decisions were leading to my entire family being scrutinized by the community, not just me, and that there was a lot of judgment toward me and toward my family as well, and how that was quite hurtful. I think it was really hard feeling like I hurt my family. It was really hard. Obviously, my family was struggling with these changes. So it was just really, I think, challenging to be so scrutinized by my community. And I think I still, even all these years later, have a little bit of like anxiety when I run into someone from my past, because there is that element of they're probably like really confused by why I would make this decision, and there being like a lot of, I guess, judgment about it. But I also acknowledge that a part of it is probably my own projection, that I'm projecting my own anxiety or fear of what they might be thinking onto them. And they could truly not be thinking anything negative at all. But I think just when you do make a really, really big change in your life that is so visible, it's natural that people are going to be curious about it. And it's natural that obviously people are going to maybe have some thoughts about it.
Yeah. Yeah. How much do you feel like you've changed in terms of your personality now that you're Muslim? Do you feel like you've changed at all, or do you feel like you've just kind of settled into who you always were supposed to become because you're Muslim now?
That's an interesting question. I think if you ask anyone who has known me for my whole life, they would say my personality is still the same old Rebecca, silly, goofy. I think like my personality is pretty much the same, but there's no doubt about it that like how I live my life has changed. Like Islam is a whole lifestyle that I adopted. And so I think like my whole way of life, my whole way of being is absolutely different than it was before I was Muslim. But I think like the tenets of who I am is still the same. And I also felt like it was really important to show my friends and family that was the case, because I think it could feel really scary to family when they see all of these like massive changes, to know that inside I'm still the same person. I'm still their daughter, I'm still their friend, I'm still their sister. All of these things, like I'm still me, but like surely elements of my lifestyle have like absolutely changed. But I like to think rather than change, I would say like I've evolved. My thinking has evolved, my lifestyle has evolved. All of these elements have evolved, and I think it wouldn't be fair to say that anyone stays the same for their entire lives, regardless of if they change their religion or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like I'm still who I am. I'm still me, just adopted a new lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. I have 3 requests from you.
Okay.
If you could give one piece of advice to someone who is researching Islam, what would it be? One piece of advice for someone who has newly reverted, and one piece of advice for a revert who is thinking about leaving Islam. What would those 3 pieces of advice be?
Okay. So advice for a person who is looking into Islam or is thinking of converting, I think take it slow. The Quran was revealed over the course of 2 decades. The Muslims back in the time of the Prophet ﷺ didn't adopt every single principle of Islam immediately. These were things that were slowly implemented and revealed like throughout the process of Islam being developed. Take it slow. Take it slow. You are not expected to learn everything and to do everything immediately right away. Take your time and know that what matters most of all is your intention. You mentioned the second piece of advice was what I would give
to a new convert.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, my advice similarly, like take your time and find your people. It can be really, really lonely and isolating when you have made this really big decision and are starting to implement it into your life and your family is not of the same faith. It can feel really isolating. And I think what makes a world of a difference is having people in your corner who are supporting you. So find those people, search high and low. If you're young, I would say look and see if there's an MSA that you can get involved with at your college or in your high school. Maybe if you're a little bit older, it gets a little bit harder, but see if there's a community in your local masjid. Sometimes they have groups or support groups for Muslims. And if it's really hard to physically find that place, you can do it online, digitally. I really felt like I also formed a community on social media, and that exists there too. There's people out there for everyone. Find your people, find the people that you connect with, whether that is at your local masjid, whether it's at your school, whether it is online. I think having supportive people in your life who you connect with makes all the difference. Your last piece of advice was to a revert maybe who's considering leaving Islam. I want to give a huge reminder to you that human beings are not perfect. Not all Muslims represent Islam. I would say no modern day Muslim is a representative of the religion of Islam because we're only human beings. And we're human beings who are actually in a quite difficult situation of practicing Islam in the West. And it's not an easy thing to do. I think remind yourself that the people you're interacting with are not necessarily indicative of this religion. And to remind yourself of all of the reasons why you came to Islam in the first place. And reflect on those reasons, because I think I didn't talk too much about it, but like surely there has been experiences that I have had in the past where I expected a lot more from Muslims or from the Muslim community because I'm like, I love this religion. This is a religion of peace. This is a religion of love. This is a religion of community. And yet people who are calling themselves Muslims are mistreating me. I think especially in college, I felt like there was a lot of clickiness within the MSA, and there was like a lot of Muslims were like, no matter how hard I tried, I just felt like I couldn't really develop those connections or friendships because I wasn't from the same culture and I didn't really understand the cultural nuances because I was a revert. And I just expected that everyone, they're Muslims, so they must be like really nice and they must be really welcoming. And like at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we all have different backgrounds and different issues, and we're only human. We're not perfect. And I've had to remind myself at times that like just because somebody says that they're Muslim doesn't mean that they are embodying the spirit of Islam. And I think be forgiving of people, but also recognize that there's a lot of issues facing the Muslim community too. And everyone in the Muslim community is just a human being like we are.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
So your experience is also quite unique in that you were born and raised Muslim, but your parents are reverts.
Right.
So you still have a lot of family that's not necessarily Muslim. You kind of are sort of like maybe straddling two communities in that way.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what that experience is like.
Yeah. So both of my parents are Black American reverts, and they became Muslim in the most Black way possible. Like the most Black way. My mom became Muslim because she read Roots by Alex Haley. Do you know Roots? Okay, good. Otherwise, I was going to have to cancel you as my white friend. Like, that was going to be really bad.
Seen all renditions of Roots.
Okay, good.
On
good.
TV, the
Perfect.
TV versions.
Yeah. I probably should have checked that before I even like said you were my actual friend, because
that's the criteria for becoming your friend.
Yeah, you got to know about slavery, girl.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So she read Alex Haley's Roots, and then she's like, I want to read something else by Alex Haley, and so she read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and she fell in love with his story. And that's how she had her first foray into Islam. So from then on, she started looking into Islam. I think she became Muslim like when she was in like right before med school, right? My mom was also in the army. She was in the Army Reserves. So she did her Hajj when she was a medic in Desert Storm. So that's her story. I'm sure she'll correct me if I said something wrong. And then my dad became Muslim in the most stereotypical way in prison. And that's how he became Muslim. And I really do hate that stereotype for Black Muslims, and he happens to fit it perfectly because everybody believes that every Black man became Muslim in prison, and he just happens to fit the stereotype.
I guess some do, some don't.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. But you should not assume that all Black Muslims became Muslim in that way. Like, my family's just really Black. We're just really blackity black, 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 black. Like, and I love that for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, before my dad became Muslim, he actually had 2.5 children.
2.5? Where's the half come from?
So I have 2 older brothers
Yes.
and an older sister.
Yes.
My 2 older brothers have a different mom than me.
Yes.
And my dad became Muslim while my brother's mom was pregnant with him.
Okay.
And so that's why he has a Muslim name. And my oldest brother has like just a regular American name, right?
Okay. Yeah.
All of my siblings are non-Muslim,
Okay.
actually. I'm my mom's only child. I know what it's like to have all non-Muslim family members and even super close siblings who are not Muslim. And I know that my parents, they became heavily involved in the Black American Muslim community. The first Muslim in America was likely a Black slave, right? Black Muslims have kind of been paving the way for Muslim communities to start.
Absolutely.
And more specifically, when there was a rise of Islam within the Black community, Black Muslims made their own spaces in America, often because they were not accepted anywhere else. They couldn't be a part of the Christian communities. And then if there were foreign Muslim communities, they weren't a part of that either. So they made their own like kind of enclave.
Yeah.
So my family found community amongst the Black American Muslim community.
I see.
And that's been my context for the majority of my life. But growing up in the Bay Area, you know, you're exposed to so many different Muslim communities. You have Yemenis, Somalis, Sudanese, like South Asians, like literally there's a whole spectrum. Palestinian. Growing up, my mom, she was always on call. And the family that took care of me while my mom was on call was a Palestinian family. I have been very lucky to have a very diverse childhood and upbringing and being able to learn about all these different communities. I also felt like growing up, it was also kind of lonely because my dad was not in my life for a large majority of my life. So it was just me and my mom. And we're spending Ramadans kind of on our own, Eids on our own. Like it was just the 2 of us because our families are not Muslim. So we're not spending all the major holidays with them. But we would go to the masjids and be a part of whatever celebrations they were having. But it's not the same as having a large family gathering and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Whenever I would meet Reverts, and when I met you, I would understand like the gap. Oh my God, you're crying.
I'm getting emotional because just so our viewers know, Ayesha and her mother kind of adopted me in those early days as a revert because
oh my God, now I'm crying.
I didn't have any family to spend Eid with. And they were always so welcoming of me. We spent like several Eids together, several Ramadans together where you let me stay at your house and fed me sahur, and like that this is like you and your mom really embraced like the spirit of Islam and the spirit of like inclusion. And I just didn't feel lonely when I had you and you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Oh my God. We're going to have to like cut out the parts where I'm crying and sobbing. My mom really did make an effort to try and like be inclusive of everybody. You know, she had all these different types of friends of all these different ethnicities and races. Anytime there was like a revert, she wanted that person to feel welcomed. And so I think that's why like I gravitated towards you so much, is because like the affinity of knowing what it's like to not have Muslim families, to feel alone is something that I felt growing up. Obviously, it's not to the same extent because I am a born Muslim.
Yeah.
Just that feeling of loneliness. And then there's the added piece of your family is not Muslim and the worry you have about what happens in the afterlife, right?
Yeah.
That's been something that I've like really struggled with in the last few years because there are people who are getting older and they're dying, and recently my Nana passed away, and just feeling like these are potentially my last moments with them in this life. And I don't know what happens in the next life, inshallah, like Allah decides to save them in some way. But it is a very harrowing like feeling of thinking about what about all my loved ones in this life, and what's gonna happen to them. So yeah, that's my spiel of just being a daughter of reverts. I think my message to the Muslim community is to continue to work on not just welcoming people into the community, but having sustainable, long-lasting relationships. I think it makes a world of difference if you can find just one revert that you really click with and decide that that's going to be like someone that you want to have in your life long term, in your family, because it makes a difference for them. But it also, I think it reminds us as born Muslims how lucky we are to be born into this religion, how much less we have to strive and struggle. Even being in the US as Muslims, it's a struggle, but being a revert/convert is even that much more of a struggle. And I've found that converts and reverts are infinitely more passionate about the religion. They seek knowledge more, and they just remind you to be a better Muslim. That's why I love hanging out with you. That's why I love her, is because she genuinely is like an amazing person, but she makes me want to be a better Muslim, right? Like I want to get on her level.
Oh my God, no,
yeah.
I want to get on your level.
No, yeah, trust me.
Making me tear up again. Oh my God, this is a very emotional episode.
I know, right? But that would be my advice to the Muslim community, specifically the born Muslim community. And I'm sure we're going to have an episode on racism and internalized racism in the Muslim community, but we really do need to have a conversation about how that shows up for reverts.
I was thinking before about how like a lot of people will ask Muslims about their revert story, and a memory came to mind about the weirdest context in which someone has asked me to tell them my story.
Really?
Yeah.
What was it? Tell us.
I had like terrible food poisoning. And I like could not hold anything down.
Yeah.
At the time I was living with my mom, my parents, and like we were so scared and didn't know what to do because it had been like all night and I couldn't hold anything down, that my mom was like, I think we should take you to the emergency room. This has only happened to me like twice in my life where it's ever been so bad that I've had to go to the emergency room. Anyway, my mom takes me to urgent care, whatever. I'm like sweating. I can't hold anything down.
Oh my God.
I'm really scared. I'm really anxious. I'm dehydrated. And obviously, like, I was wearing a hijab and my mom, who's not Muslim, was not wearing a hijab.
Right.
And they admit me into the urgent care, and I'm like lying on a hospital bed, feeling the worst you could ever possibly feel. And there was a male nurse, and he's like, so what religion are you?
Okay.
I'm Muslim. And he's like, were you born Muslim? I'm like, no, I wasn't. And then he asked me, what would make you decide to, you know, convert to this religion? And I am lying there dying.
Because I want God to save me right now.
Like, this is not at all an appropriate context to ask someone their favorite story.
Right.
And I feel so awful. I'm like, I'll tell you later, man. Like, I don't feel good right now. You know? And I'm like, by the way, I'm like lying there shivering, like I'm anxious. I was so sick. And I'm like, what possesses someone to like ask someone to tell them their life story as they are, you know, fighting for their life on a hospital bed?
Oh my God. Was this person Muslim?
I don't think so. I think
He was
a
just
white guy who was curious.
He's like, "Do you think God will save you now?"
No,
I
I
said, "Yeah."
so.
I mean, you're here, so alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Right? That's so weird. That's crazy. Well,
Yeah.
maybe he was trying to take your mind off of it. Take your mind off of things, and that was the only thing he could think of.
Maybe, but I
Yeah.
was just really not in a position to be talking.
No, you weren't. You weren't. I mean, clearly people, they want to know your business,
I
right?
know.
Yeah.
And I should have added, like, it was 3 a.m. Like, it was the middle of the night.
Really?
I was exhausted.
Oh my God.
I was fighting for my life out there.
Yeah.
And it, like, in no world was it appropriate
Right.
to be asking someone these questions
Yeah.
in the context of what was happening.
Definitely.
I'll just put it like that.
Yeah, 100%. This just goes to show you that, like, perhaps, like, wait for the person to reveal their own revert story in their own
Yeah.
time, right? Before you go out and ask them. Now is the time where we read your listener letters and we respond and give our opinions. And if you want your listener letter to be read aloud on the pod, you can send an email to girlprayonitpod@gmail.com and we may just read it aloud on the podcast.
We just might.
Okay, great. I'm so glad and grateful to be a Muslim, alhamdulillah. This is the best I've ever been throughout my whole life, and I can't think of living my life any way else. This is going to be a bit of a rant. The thing is, lately, I have been having a bit of what I like to call revert fatigue. Being a revert sometimes feels a bit exhausting. Always having to hide your Islam from specific people and constantly being grilled for everything. I don't want to sound ungrateful, but I think the main thing that I've been struggling with is the focus of me being a revert. I feel like I always have to be reminded from non-Muslims and Muslims that I wasn't born Muslim, and it's not always in a negative way. I know they mean well. It's just I'm on the board for the MSA, and honestly, I think I may have jumped the gun a bit since I'm a new revert, and now I feel overwhelmed. Apparently, I'm the first revert to ever be on the board, and they never let me forget it. I'm always expected to share my story all of the time, even to people that hardly know my name, and I'm encouraged to do it for marketing purposes as well, which I understand is to draw people in, but I just want to be Muslim, you know?
Yeah.
I don't want to be constantly asked about why Islam, what made you revert from everyone else. And before I even get a chance to introduce myself, I get cut off mid-sentence to tell everyone that I'm a revert all the time and I'm proud of it, but the label can be so exhausting. Or when I speak about Islam and someone randomly says, you know, she's a revert too, and she knows so much. And then everyone's talking about how they're surprised I'm a revert because I sound knowledgeable. How should I handle this situation? Sincerely, revert fatigue.
I have been there before.
Yeah.
I think that really resonated with me. And I will say it really is exhausting in those beginning early years when the context in which all of the people that you know are still contextualizing you as a revert. And that's how they know you. That's how you've been introduced. Maybe they even witnessed you say your shahada. If that's the context that they know you, it is really hard to escape that bubble. But I think the longer and longer that you're in the Muslim community, the more that label starts to fade a little bit. So I think it's very common in the very beginning for that to be the case and for that fatigue to really come up and having to like constantly share your story and explain yourself over years and years. When you meet new people, you're able to introduce yourself in a new context of just being Muslim. And if you don't want to share that you're a revert, you don't have to. But I can certainly relate very much to that feeling very early on. I think one thing to remember is that people who are born and raised Muslim are living in their context of being born and raised Muslim and may not have ever met a revert or may not know a revert. So they get excited. You know, they're excited to meet a revert, to hear their story. And so I think I have so much empathy and understanding for why people get really excited and want to hear like all these stories and ask the questions. And they're well-meaning. But absolutely, when you're a revert and you're getting those questions over and over again, you've now told your story 1,500 times. It's a lot and it's overwhelming. My thought is I've actually stopped introducing myself to new people as a revert.
Mm-hmm.
And if it comes up, of course, I'm happy to talk about it. But I've stopped making that the forefront of my identity.
Mm-hmm.
My identity is no longer that I'm just a revert. My identity is that I'm a Muslim. My context is that I am a practicing Muslim for 13 years, and I will introduce myself as just being Rebecca, and I'm just a Muslim. And if somebody asks, then we'll have that conversation, but I don't really lead with it anymore. But of course, I still get a lot of the time, where are you from?
Yeah.
Where are you from? I'm from here. No, where are you really from? And the interesting thing about that question is it actually comes a lot more from Muslims than it does from the non-Muslims.
Yeah. Do you think it's because they're just assuming that you're like something else? Like they just assume, like non-Muslims are like just assuming you're like some different ethnicity or race.
Yes, I think non-Muslims are probably making an assumption that I am Arab or I'm Turkish. That's something I've heard before. They're like making an assumption that I'm from a Muslim country, and non-Muslims are a little bit more, maybe have a little bit more of experience or have an eye and are like, we know that you're not born and raised Muslim.
Right.
So I actually get the question a lot more from the Muslim community, or people, where are you from? Like they're trying to place it. And obviously when that comes up, then I say, my family's Eastern European. I'm born and raised in America, but I reverted to Islam. I think like when I was getting that fatigue, as you had expressed, I realized that I needed to stop leading and introducing myself as the revert and stop labeling myself as the revert and start just thinking of myself as a Muslim.
Yeah. And as someone who has been on the board of an MSA as well, I would maybe just have a frank conversation either with the president or with the whole board itself about utilizing your identity as a marketing tool. If you're comfortable having the conversation about, I'd like to start to transition away from being the zoo animal revert that everybody can just kind of come up to and learn my story. Rather, I just want to be a part of this board and help serve the Muslim community on this campus. If they are respectful of those boundaries, they should hear that, receive it, and act accordingly. But I think it would be definitely important to have that conversation with the MSA, because while it is good to have representation on these boards, I think in a lot of more MSAs need to become much more diverse. I understand that being the only one makes you feel like you are like something to be gawked at, something to, you're an attraction rather than a part of a community.
Or even tokenized in some way.
100%. When people are asking you to share your revert story, I would maybe, if you feel comfortable with it, I would encourage you to come up with a response that feels good to you, that allows you to sidestep that conversation. You can say something like, Alhamdulillah, I am so happy to be a revert. It's kind of a long story, and I'd love to maybe discuss that with you at a different time. Something that's not rude, but something that clearly shows the person that's not something you're interested in talking about right now. And they should respect that. Hey, I mean, if it's really something that people really want to know about, make a YouTube video and send them the link. Be like, if you want to know so bad, here you go. Right?
I like that.
Right? I don't know, write it out on a card or something. People love hearing these stories. Part of the reason why born Muslims love hearing revert stories is because it gives them a renewed sense of purpose and reminds them why they're Muslim, right? A lot of it is also intrigue, because I don't think a lot of born Muslims would choose Islam for themselves if they were not Muslim, because it can be a lot, right? It can be a lot. And so that idea of, wait, you had freedom and you chose to do this, freedom, right? You had the ability to do whatever you wanted and you chose to be Muslim. I think a lot of people actually see Islam as a burden. Yeah, unfortunately, right? Well, okay, I'm not going to say a lot of people, but I think when people ask those questions, it's coming from a place of, oh, wow, like you had the ability to do whatever, right? And so for them, it's intrigue into why choose this for yourself.
That's interesting, because I disagree a little bit. I think anyone whether you're Muslim, born into Islam, or you're a revert, anyone has the ability to do anything that they want. We have free will in this life.
Yes.
If you are born into Islam, you are actively making a choice to practice this religion, because, like, if you didn't want to practice the religion, no one is forcing you to. Maybe perhaps there's family pressure, societal pressure, community pressure. But at the end of the day, we all have free will to do whatever we want. I think that every single Muslim who is practicing Islam is making the conscious decision to practice Islam.
Yeah.
And I think we all sort of have a revert moment within us where we all sort of make a decision to pursue Islam and to be a practicing Muslim.
To the listener letter that we read out, I want you to advocate for yourself, especially within the MSA. Maintain your boundaries, and inshallah, things will get easier. If you're in an MSA, you still have a lot of life left to live. And perhaps maybe, they're probably not in high school, but if you are in high school or you're in college, you have the opportunity to reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
And like Rebecca said earlier, like, kind of start with you're just Muslim, right? Rather than beginning with your revert story. And as you feel comfortable and form those relationships with people, you can share that as you wish. Right?
Yeah. It all comes down to communication, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I feel like that's kind of every podcast episode we've done that's sort of been a theme is communication, really just telling people, if you're not up for it, like, I will tell you my story at another time. There's nothing wrong with asserting your boundary by saying, I'm so happy to share that with you, just not right now.
Yeah. And the other thing is, you don't owe anybody any information about your revert story, especially if your revert story came from something that was like super traumatic, right? Like, not all revert stories are like rainbows and sunshine. A lot of them are, I was at the lowest point in my life and I was asking God to help me, and that's how I found this religion.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to understand that, like, you're not owed an explanation as to why someone came into this religion. I'm nosy and I would love to know the tea, but also just understanding that, like, this is a delicate situation for some, especially for new reverts who are still actively dealing with the backlash and aftermath of them changing religions. Yeah.
Right.
Anything to add?
I think we got it all.
All right, great. I think we got it all. So if you want us to read your listener letter on the podcast, you can send us an email to girlprayonitpod@gmail.com. Again, that's girlprayonitpod@gmail.com. And we might just read it on the podcast. So now is the time in the podcast where I, Ayesha, look at the camera and I rant about something that is bothering me that day, that week, that month, whatever. And today, along the lines of talking about revert, I am not a revert. However, I hate, and I've actually done a TikTok on this, but I'll reiterate for people who have maybe not seen my face before. I cannot stand when people ask me, are you Muslim? Because you cannot be serious right now. We both have eyes, and unless you are legally blind and you cannot see, right? There's no reason why you should be asking me that, because it's very, very obvious, right? It's very obvious. I give a little bit of leeway to people who are non-Muslim and maybe they don't have a lot of interactions with Muslims and they're just like, well, I think that's a Muslim, right? But this question comes almost 95% from Muslims, from other Muslims who have been born and raised into the religion, and they are asking me if I am Muslim. It's just, we have to do better as a community. It doesn't make sense. And I was asked this question as recently as 3 months ago. Actually, my mom was asked this question, and we were at a farmer's market, and the guy was like, are you Muslim? And we're just like standing there like, no. Like, for the longest time, I would just be sarcastic and be like, no, I'm allergic to the sun. That's why I wear this. I'm allergic and can't have. But then I was just like, what does sarcasm do? And it's just, yeah, I'm Muslim. And then sometimes I'm like, well, what do you think? And it's just, I feel like it's just a lazy question. I'm Muslim. Like, we both know I'm Muslim, so you don't need to ask me that question. And I feel like a lot of it is rooted in racism. A lot of it is rooted in the fact that I'm very clearly and visibly Black. And you're asking me this question because you want to see if I'm a real Muslim, right? I don't know. Have you gotten that question?
All the time.
Really?
All the time.
From?
All different kind of people.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think it's a conversation starter. I think they obviously know that I'm Muslim,
Yeah.
but that's just sort of their way of starting a conversation or learning more about me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get it all the time. And I also have that feeling of, obviously, yes, I am. But I don't know, maybe they see me and they're confused because I'm white, but I'm wearing a hijab and they don't really know where I'm from or what my background is. I don't know. I try to give them like a little bit of leeway, knowing that like maybe they're confused, but I think I share some of your feelings.
Yeah.
You know what a Muslim wears.
Exactly.
You know that we wear hijab. I'm wearing a hijab. I'm very visibly Muslim.
Exactly. So that's my rant. Let's stop asking the dumb questions and let's get to the good stuff. If you want to know my business, just be open about it. I get it. I'm also a fellow nosy person and I want to know everybody's tea and everybody's business. So just come out and say it. It's good. Like I have one time, okay, here's a story. I was in an Uber. Okay? In an Uber. And this guy, I think he was like either Somalian or Sudanese. He was East African. And he's driving me around. He's like, are you Muslim? I'm like, yes, I am Muslim. And he's like, oh, okay. Recite Al-Fatiha. And I'm like,
oh my God. Isn't it like pop quiz?
Yeah, so I'm like, I'm doing this for you. I am not your little show pony. I prefer a quiet ride, sir. Like, I don't want to be doing this. I just think it's rude.
No, that's rude.
Yeah.
That's really rude. It's like he was like testing you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, like, I think especially for like Black Americans, people just don't believe that we are Muslim. Like, we are Muslim enough. You know what I mean? It just gets on my nerves, and that's what my rant is about. If you've had encounters like that, we would love to know. Go ahead and leave us a comment or send us an email to our email, GoPrayOnItPod, and I'd love to hear.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think I would just say, I think one of the difficulties for reverts in the community is kind of like the assumption that we must be new Muslims and don't know anything. There are reverts who've been reverts for 20 years, have been Muslim for 20 years, 30 years. Like, not everyone is like a brand new Muslim.
I know.
Like, you get to a point where you have learned enough that you're integrated into Muslim society at this point. And I think the like assumption that a lot of Muslims have towards revert is that we don't know anything. And I think that can feel a little bit hurtful sometimes, a little insulting sometimes. I think I remember I had been Muslim for maybe 5 years and someone was like, do you know how to pray?
Bro.
Like,
oh
yes,
my God.
I do.
Yeah.
In Arabic? Yes, in Arabic. I know how to
That's
pray.
crazy.
So I think it can be quite hurtful, and I'm sure a lot of reverts can relate to people just like automatically assuming that because you're a revert, you don't know anything. And that's not the truth. And obviously, we'll talk about this on another episode, but making assumptions that all Black people are reverts is problematic.
Oh, yeah. The question, how long have you been Muslim? And I'm like, 31 years. They're like, wow, how old are you? 31. I'm 31. Like, that question is wild to me. But some people don't have tact and decorum. But we're all growing. We're all learning. Inshallah, if you know better, you can do better. Any last things before we end it?
We got it. And maybe we'll revisit this at a later time when we hear back from our wonderful listeners.
Yeah,
but
inshallah.
I think, inshallah, we're here.
Yeah.
We got what we got today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Girl, Pray on It. Bye.
Next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Girl Pray on It podcast. We hope today's conversation gave you something to reflect on. Be sure to follow us on both Instagram and TikTok at Girl Pray on It Pod. and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Girl Pray On It Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen, so you'll always be up to date with our newest episodes. Stay connected, stay encouraged, and as always, girl, pray on it.